Okay, Larry, why don't you just start out by introducing yourself?
Okay. My name is Larry Optis. I've been a police constable with the Toronto Police Service for roughly 3 years. I live north of the city. I'm a proud father, athlete, and I engage with my community as much as I can.
Larry, is this the first time you've ever done like any sort of public speaking in regards to your policing? I know you've been pretty public in other aspects of your life, but is this like the first time? Is this the unveiling of Constable Larry Optis?
Yeah, it definitely is. There's probably a lot of people in my life that don't know I'm a police officer,
Oh,
but
really?
this is my first time openly speaking about being a constable.
Okay, so do you think that they'd be surprised to find out that you're a police officer? These people that don't know?
Probably there's going to be a few people that'll be surprised because I've done a lot of different things in my life. Um, but yeah, I think it was also a natural progression for me to get into a line of work where I'm serving others.
Okay. So, Larry, let's go back. Let's go back to itty bitty Larry. Tell me where you grew up. Tell me about your
Okay.
childhood. Tell me how you got into cycling. Spoiler alert for anybody watching this, Larry is really big into cycling, incredibly impressive guy. So, pick it up wherever you want to start out, Larry.
Okay, sure. I grew up in the Czech Republic and immigrated to Canada with my family when I was 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
Uh, got into martial arts when I was young, when I was 10 years old, something I was really passionate about for about 6 years. And then just got into doing more outdoor stuff. So hiking, rock climbing, and cycling when I was 15 and 16. And then eventually I began bicycle touring, which is basically, uh, cycling long distances, camping, and just traveling on your bike. So that's kind of how the whole cycling thing began. And after high school, when I was 18, I cycled to Key West, Florida, which took about 25 days, and that was in the late 90s. And then from that moment, I was kind of hooked on endurance sports, primarily cycling at the time. And it's something I just really enjoyed doing. It gave me a lot of just purpose and satisfaction. It was a great outlet for me for my energy. And yeah, it was just about, venturing outwards, exploring places, discovering, um, new cities. But at the same time, I think there's always an inward journey that takes place when you do something that's difficult and challenging. And I think it allows you to discover who you are and, what your character is made of. And I just found that to be just a really good sort of potential for growth as a person as well.
There are so many things to unpack there. I have like a million questions in my head going in a bunch of different directions. I just want to start with something that I wasn't aware of. The fact that you came to Canada when you were 9 years old from Czech Republic, what was that like? Like you must remember that whole transition. What was it like coming as a young boy who, I mean, not too young, but 9 years old. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was definitely intimidating not knowing the language, and then just being in a completely different environment. We grew up in a, more of a tourist town in the Czech, and which was, filled with mountains and forests. And I was just used to getting out and hiking with my family and doing outdoor sports, cross country skiing. And then to come to a big city like Toronto, it was kind of difficult just finding my footing at the beginning. But
Mm.
then I think immersing myself into martial arts, uh, that just really helped ground me at the time. And it was just a really good outlet for my energy and just to kind of pour my passion into something. So I think I was really fortunate that my parents realized that and supported that as well.
I think like I told you in the phone conversation, I think we had earlier this week, I've always found like exercise, that physical release to be so good for my mental health, my anxiety. Like I do like indoor cycling, nowhere near the cycling that you do, Larry, but sweating it out for me has always been really good. So I can see how like the exercise would have been good for you as you adjust in Canada and whatnot. Who got you into cycling? Because it's one thing to say, start cycling, but you don't just go from hopping on a bike to hopping on a bike again, bike and cycling down to the southernmost tip of the United States. So who got you into that?
I think it was just an interest that I had. I used to always commute on my bike to go to the martial arts class,
Hmm.
and it was just I just wanted to go further each time. And then even when I started rock climbing and doing other things, I thought, oh, I wonder if I can ride my bike to the climbing
Hmm.
spot, and would ride 50 kilometers. And then, yeah, it just got me getting out further. And it's just something that I was really passionate about. Yeah, like I just loved the way it felt when I was covering long distances. And yeah, I just kind of grew into this obsession over time.
Okay, so did you go by yourself down to Florida, or were you riding with some other people?
No, I went by myself. I planned the trip over the course of the summer, and then kind of left Labor Day weekend back in 1997, and just covering about 160 kilometers every day, and cooking
Wow.
my own food and that sort of thing, and just camping either on the side of the road or at campsites. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of getting into endurance sports, and some of the things that I still do to this day. So yeah.
So I want to stick with this Florida trip just for a little bit more because I find it so fascinating. You were what, 18 years old? 17,
18.
18? Like to think of a young man heading out and doing such a huge thing by himself. I'm thinking about the movie like Into the Wild. Like there you are, into the wild, Larry. What did you carry with you? What do you take with you? Because you're on a bicycle, you're not on a motorcycle, you don't have a trunk.
Yeah, so you carry the bare essentials basically. So you got your bike specific clothing, then some warm layers, rain gear, a sleeping pad, sleeping bag, and a tent, and that's essentially it basically. And at the time, I was doing this thing on a budget where I was just trying to survive and fuel the day by only spending $5.
Wow. $5, but
So
you're burning so many calories. How can you even buy $5 worth of calories to keep you going?
I know it wasn't the most healthiest diet that I followed, but I mean back then you could buy a snack at a convenience store for like 25 cents, and
Yes,
like
that's true.
300 calories. So if I bought five of those, I was able to kind of sustain myself throughout the day, and then I would cook something up at the end of the day, like macaroni and cheese or something like that.
Oh
So
my
I mean, I
gosh.
didn't always sometimes I spent a little bit more, but like $5 was the goal for each day.
And did you cycle back home then, or did you hop on a flight back home or hitchhike?
No, the plan was to fly back, and then I met a family down in the Florida Keys, and a gentleman there that drove me to Columbus, Ohio, and then I cycled home from Columbus, Ohio, which was another week. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, you can just leave me here. It's okay. I got it from here. I'm just gonna like hop on my bike. We're right around the corner from Ontario. Okay, so where does it go from there? You cycle all the way down to Florida. Where does your life take you from there? And because I imagine you did a lot of thinking on this trip, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about that first. Did it give you direction of what you wanted to do with your life, or just pick it up
I
with that?
think the intention behind the trip was to kind of get that direction, but I think ultimately I came back a little bit more confused. So
Oh, really? Why do you
yeah,
think
just
that is?
it just kind of opened up a lot of different possibilities and what I wanted to do, and how competitive I wanted to take cycling. So when I came back, I started competing in these 24-hour cycling races when I was 19, and found out that I did quite well, like typically placing in the top three in these events. And eventually, it got me thinking about a bigger goal, which was it's called the Race Across America. It happens every year. It began in the early 1980s, and it's basically a nonstop coast to coast race from California to Atlantic City. So I just began to set my sights on that. And that was kind of a 10-year goal. And so
Mhm.
progressively, I just started doing races that were longer, multi day races, qualifying events to get myself prepared to do it. And then to also like raise the funds, and to be able to back it financially as well.
Yeah,
Because
because you'd want at least like 750 a day for the race across America, right? You want to be able
well,
to sustain yourself on more than like hot rods and craft dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot more than that.
So, how many kilometers is that from one coast to the other?
It's 5,000 kilometers,
Mm-hmm.
and you're roughly cycling anywhere between 400 to even 600 kilometers a day, and
Wow.
you're maybe sleeping a couple of hours a night. And so it's just a nonstop race. There's no set time in terms of when you need to sleep, but you
Mm-hmm.
just have to kind of manage and police yourself with the amount of rest that you get to ensure that you make all the cutoff times as well.
So
You know?
how do you physically do that, Larry? Because you're riding all day, you sleep 2 hours, you get back on your bike. Like, how do you ride the next day, the entire day? How is that physically possible?
Well, I mean, you got to prepare for these events. So try to make your training as grueling as possible. But there's obviously elements of events like this that you can't train for. You can't really duplicate the mileage and training. So obviously, a lot of that's going to come down to, your desire for doing an event like that and the why behind it. That's going to kind of fuel you forward. Your physical ability is only going to take you so far in an event like that. And then, you just have to have that belief in yourself that you can do something, greater than yourself.
What was your why? I know it was a 10-year goal for you, but what was your driving force when you were out on the road?
I think it was a dream to accomplish this event, because it's still considered to be one of the hardest cycling races on the planet. So the fact that I put so much work and invested so much energy into cycling, I also it's kind of the Mount Everest of sort of the cycling world in terms of endurance sports. So I wanted to reach that peak. And then, yeah, it's just about self-discovery. It's more than anything, it's kind of a spiritual journey, I think, that you have to go on. So as you go across, the US, um, you know, um, just moving over the land physically, you're also taking that inward journey as well.
Hmm.
You're kind of descending inwards and sort of navigating through your own inner landscape and figuring out, what you're made of, because eventually you get stripped of all the things, that we're used to every day, all the luxuries and conveniences of life, and it's really just like, down to just moving forward, when you're in pain, when you're uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. So there's always like this opportunity that I see in doing things that are difficult, that it allows you to kind of see your own potential of like what you can do. And every time you do that, it also enables you to kind of see the potential in other people and the people around you as well. So I think when you take a step back and sort of unpack the experience, it makes it a lot easier for you to believe in others and believe in their goals, and be supportive of that. And I think that's what's super important. That when you have people in your life, whether it's your family or your community, that you also support their goals and their endeavors.
How do you extrapolate realizing that you can do something to then reflecting that on the people around you, that like if you can do it, other people can do it too? Because Larry, I'm telling you, I cannot cycle across America. So just tell me where your thought process comes from there.
Well, I think like we're not that special, right? And we're not very different from each other, right? Like I'm not, a exceptional athlete in any way. I had to work really hard at cycling and getting good at it. And eventually when you work hard at something, you do get good at it, right? And so, yeah, I don't think there's anything unique about doing these things. And the fact that, I'm just human and, working hard towards something, anyone can do that, right? And it might start with just walking around the block and
Mm.
maybe, registering for a 5 kilometer run or something like that. It doesn't have to be so extreme. It's all relative to kind of, what you do, your life, all the different challenges that you might have. Sometimes life in itself is challenging enough that we don't need to put these challenges in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, every so often it's good to test yourself at any point in your life to just continue to grow and strive and to do something that's difficult, something that scares you, sometimes it'll keep you up at night, but it'll also get you up in the morning to want to, achieve that thing that you envision for yourself.
What did you learn about yourself on that ride? What were you thinking about on that ride beyond the fact that you could indeed complete that immense physical challenge?
Yeah, I had like I think a lot of people when they do these things that you have a mantra that you kind of recite through the day, and some of us will have a mantra, every day, and but during that time, it was just that the mantra that I had was there are only mountains of the mind, and no horizon is too far. And so, if you can conquer those mountains, in your mind, then you can achieve any horizon. You can continue to move towards any horizon, right? No matter how slow you're moving, you're still getting closer to where you want to go.
I love that. That's awesome. So in the end, what was it? 2 weeks? Like, how long did it take you to complete that race?
Yeah, it was just under 2 weeks. It was like 12 days and 3 hours. It was
Yeah.
a little bit slower than I had anticipated, but yeah, there was a lot of unforeseen challenges, but that's part of it. You got to kind of work through them, and then
What were
just
some of
keep
those challenges?
moving. Just aches and pains that I wasn't anticipating, not being able to put any pressure like on your hands, because a lot of the nerves in your hands get compressed. Same with your feet, so like all your contact points are extremely painful.
Wow.
I needed a little bit more sleep than maybe some of the other competitors. There's people that can get away with 90 minutes a night, but I needed a little bit longer than that. So yeah, just a variety of different things, but yeah, and then there's the nutrition aspect. So it's just managing all of those things, and yeah, and just doing the best that you can with what you have, right, and with how you're feeling, and everything is just kind of temporary in those events. It's if there's a certain way that you're feeling in 8 hours in, it doesn't mean you're gonna feel like that for the next 3 days. And so there's some great takeaways from that, even just into your own life, right? No matter where we are or what challenges we have, it's we're not our circumstance, and so you have to kind of put things into perspective. And if you're going through a turbulent time in your life, you just have to realize that you just got to weather that storm for a little bit longer, and and then eventually that's going to fade away, right?
So you would have been what, like 29 around the time that you did that?
Yeah, I was 28 actually. Yeah.
And how old are you now?
43.
Okay, so lots has happened in between there.
Yeah.
You mentioned, just because you've already mentioned this word, I want to bring it up. You mentioned that was sort of like the Everest of the cycling world, but you've done another Everest of the cycling world. Can you tell us about the Everest climb? The
Sure.
Everest ride. Am I using the right terminology? Is it the Everest ride?
It's called Everesting.
Okay. Everesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it basically refers to doing a specific hill, no matter sort of where you are in the world. It could be, the hill that's in your backyard, and you repeat that climb as many times as it would take to climb the height of Mount Everest. So you have to accumulate the elevation. So a few years back in 2017, I decided to take on this challenge. I think at the time there was only a handful of people in Canada that had successfully done it, and ended up doing this Everesting ride up in Terracotta, just north of the city, and doing 110 repetitions of a climb there, accumulating 10,000 meters in elevation. So a little bit over the Mount Everest elevation. And I did that for a charity called jack.org, which focuses on youth mental health programs, and basically gives young people the tools to navigate through mental health challenges.
So, okay, I absolutely want to jump into jack.org, but the Everesting that you did, had you planned like a long time in advance, like what day you were going to do it on? I imagine you would have scoped out like different hills and whatnot, but the reason I asked this is because you ended up riding on like a really crappy weather day, right? Like it was raining and cold, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was probably as bad as you want to have it for cycling. It was just above 0 degrees and it was raining. So
Oh.
it's actually really hard to stay warm in conditions like that because you're just getting wet, and then you're kind of at that borderline of potentially getting hypothermic as well. So,
Hmm.
I had to prepare for that and plan for that, and change my clothes every 90 minutes. And I had 7 different jackets with me and gloves and multiple pairs of shoes. But yeah, I just accepted the challenge on the day and decided to go for it, kind of, in true sort of Everest fashion. I think I'm sure there's no ideal condition to
Yeah. Well,
climb
there
Mount.
are ideal conditions in Everest, don't they? Don't they look up at the clouds or something and say, "Okay,
They
we're
do,
not
yeah.
going to the area." Okay, so wait, so Larry, like what month was this in the year? It
This
was
was this was in May. So typically,
what?
yeah, it
0
was in May,
degrees.
and
Wow.
yeah, we just had just terrible weather that day, and it was just downpour and raining and just above that freezing mark. So, but
Eh,
eventually got into a really good rhythm. And there were people from the cycling community that I've known for a decade or two that came out to support the ride as well,
mhm.
and that also helped with some of the fundraising for Jack.org. Yeah.
Okay, so the weather, though, was not the only challenge that you overcame that day, because I understand that like part of this is you're mapping your altitude, right? Or you're keeping track of your altitude, and your what was it? Garmin didn't work
Yeah.
or something that day. So you got to the end of the race, you got home, and what did you realize?
Well, yeah, typically in conditions like that, depending on the kind of technology you're using to track these rides, weather can play a factor, especially
Mhm.
if it's overcast and cloudy and raining. So it can rob you of some of the elevation. So even though I did the math in terms of, how many repeats I needed to do to gain the elevation, I knew I had it, but I was still 700 meters short when I got home and uploaded the ride. And so you have actually a specific amount of time to do the ride, and I still had a few hours left to complete it. So then I ended up going back to the hill and doing another 2 hours in order to get the exact elevation.
So
So
how many extra meters did you end up doing? Do you recall?
probably did an extra 1,000 meters, maybe.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just to be safe, let's just like shoot even higher, right? And you had already been on the bike for what was it, like 18 hours? Like how long was the initial ride?
The initial ride was a little bit longer. I believe it was like over 24 hours. And then with the
Oh,
extra that I did, it was like 27 hours.
right. Yes. Okay. Remarkable. Like absolutely remarkable. Okay. So Larry, you've done martial arts, you've dabbled in cycling, You're I asked you on our phone call earlier this week, like if you do running too. And I believe actually the word you used was I do a bit of running. Is that right? You do a bit of running.
I do a little bit of running. That's right.
Yeah, okay. So what did you do last weekend with your little bit of running?
Well, I ended up doing one of these ultra marathons, which is anything longer than a marathon. So anything longer than 42 kilometers would qualify as an ultra marathon. And I had done a little bit more, like quite a bit more running, probably 10 years ago, and then just kind of it's always been there, but nothing that I was always super focused on. But it's
Mm.
something that I enjoyed doing. So I ended up doing a like a 100-kilometer trail run down in the Finger Lakes in New York State.
Wow. Like I think about like a little trail run as like, okay, guys, like enjoy your peanut butter sandwiches. I'm just gonna go out for a run. I'll be back in like 20 minutes. I'll be sure to take any pictures of like coyotes or something. But 100 kilometers for a guy that just does a bit of running, like that is remarkable. Okay, I know we've talked and talked and talked a lot about that, but about your your physical fortitude. Tell me about jack.org, this charity that you were supporting through that cycling, and something that you've been involved with. For how long have you been involved with them for?
I've been involved with Jack.org for just over 5 years.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I knew Eric Windler, who's the founder of Jack.org, years ago, just through various different cycling events that I used to take part in. And Eric lost his son to suicide at Queen's University over a decade ago. And then ended up leaving his corporate job to start up Jack.org and basically dedicate his life to helping teens and young people to sort of navigate through the challenges of youth mental health. So, you know, I see Eric as a great mentor for me, and you know, just he was able to take a tremendous amount of pain in his life and put it towards something great, which for me is just super admirable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was just so moved by the organization and the work that they do. It just really resonated with me. You know, I think like a lot of young people and teenagers, I, you know, suffered with bouts of depression and anxiety growing up, which, you know, lasted a few years, even into my 20s. And, you know, I struggled with that. So, and then being, you know, a new dad as well, you know, I never wanted, you know, my daughter to grow up in a world where you can't ask for help, or if you know, or you don't know the answer to a problem. And I don't want that for anyone, any young person. And I think it's important that we, you know, we can all contribute to mental health and to help sort of, you know, eradicate the stigma around it as well.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Now, Larry, you I know that you run, you cycle, you're not into swimming yet, but you've coached, you've coached. I know I found some old articles about coaching that young student in a huge swimming feat. So I wonder, as a coach, like what you tell your students. I don't know, maybe she was the only one, but maybe you coach a lot of people. I don't know, maybe you can fill us in on that. But what you tell your students that are like, I can't break this record. I can't do that extra kilometer. What do you tell them given your experiences?
Yeah, I think it's you know, part of it's just discovering what you're capable of doing, and I think like we all have a, you know, untapped potential that we haven't really reached, right? And I think especially for a young person, you know, if they're struggling with their mental health or you know, different aspects of their life, and they decide to, you know, pursue a goal that pushes them, that, you know, you have to have that belief in yourself that, you know, I can do this. But it's also important to surround yourself with people who are going to support you and have a really good circle of friends that are kind of pushing you to, you know, to strive and to you know, focus on your goals and, you know, turn some of that, you know, negative energy into something positive as well. And it takes work. You can't, you know, obviously just get up in the morning and go out and do these big marathons and stuff. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and, you know, a big part of that, you know, I believe is discipline, like just being disciplined in your daily life, just around your routines and the work that you put in, because, you know, every day can contribute to your success. And so the days that you take off, you don't really know how far back those days are setting you either, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've all probably experienced that when we get into a routine at the beginning of the year and we're like, oh, I'm gonna exercise every single day, and then you miss a day, miss 2 days, and then it's like, okay, I'll miss 3 days. Oh, you know what, I'm not gonna do anything this week, I'll start next week. And you know, eventually you're, you know, 3 months down the road and you're still not sort of where you want to be. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, discipline's a really big part of it, and then just and committing to the goal that you have. Or yeah.
Where do you rate, like, I imagine it's an amazing feeling when you have a personal accomplishment, whether it's, you know, that Everesting or ride across America or the multitude of things that you've accomplished personally, but how do you rate the feeling of helping somebody else accomplish something as a coach, and seeing your student, or is that what you call them? Your student, your athlete, whatever, seeing them accomplish something that maybe they felt might be insurmountable at some point.
Yeah, you know, I don't see myself as a coach. Like it's more of like a friend, or, you know, maybe people think of me as their mentor, which is you know, extremely flattering. But it's just, you know, I've had certain experiences and I've learned from them, and I do also want to pass on some of the things that I've learned through doing those challenging things. But yeah, there's a great sense of satisfaction, seeing someone accomplish something that maybe they didn't think they were capable of doing, right? And so, yeah, I just love that. I love seeing people surprise themselves and break new boundaries. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, I want to switch gears entirely because you are wearing a police uniform, but you are not always destined to wear this uniform because you actually studied to be a firefighter before becoming a police officer, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like how far you got in that process before
Sure.
switching gears?
Yeah. Before that, I was, fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home dad for a few years, and then I went through the fire academy program, did all the training, but kind of early on in that, I just couldn't see myself doing it for whatever reason. And then I had a handful of friends that were in law enforcement with Toronto Police Service that kind of planted the seed, and it's something I began to think about more and more. And I realized that, with some of the work that I've done in the past in the charity world and some of the experiences that I've had just in life, I thought, uh, you know, going into the policing sector would be somewhere where I can really apply some of those things that I've learned.
Yeah, I wonder if like was one of the things that drew you to policing because when I think about the first responder community, like just say police, fire, and ambulance, you all do remarkable work, and you have my utmost respect. I suppose one of the things that makes policing different is it gives you an opportunity to step into different roles. It could perhaps allow you to like mentor people or create relationships with the community that like it's not always just call to call to call throughout your career. Is that one of the things that attracted you to it, like being like the potential to connect with people, just because you seem like such a type of person to just want to give what you have received?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that attracted me to the service is the variety of different roles that you can play. I mean, essentially, I think you can have a different career every 5 years if
Mm.
you really wanted to go that route. And just your ability to engage with people, engage with communities, is incredible. So yeah, it just was a great opportunity to sort of give back in that sense. And yeah, I'm just really excited and having a lot of fun, and it's super rewarding to just be out there going radio call to radio call and just being at service of
Mhm.
to the community, right? So
When did you start on with TPS?
started on at the end of 2019, and
Okay.
then yeah, at 14 division for the last 2.5 years.
So you started at end of 2019. That's when you went to the Ontario Police College.
That's right.
Like
Yeah.
you just squeaked right in there, like right before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
That's lucky timing. And then to start policing during a pandemic, I imagine would have been quite the ride, like coming with its own challenges, of course. So you've been at 14 ever since. You are public response unit? No, what is it?
Primary. Yeah.
Primary response. I knew I
Yeah.
had the wrong P. Okay, so primary response unit, like you said, you're jumping from 911 call to 911 call. Do you find opportunities to really connect with members of the community there, or is that something like you're looking forward to in the years to come?
It's something I'm looking forward to in years to come in more specialty units. But I think there's always an opportunity, every day to connect with someone, because you can always control the situation or the conversation, on a radio call, and a lot of times we will connect with people or with a parent or a sibling, or depending on what the situation is. But yeah, definitely, there's a lot of rewarding moments, and there's times where you really feel like you're connecting with the public.
Are
Yeah.
you comfortable sharing any of those moments with us? Like keeping it vague enough, obviously, to not identify anybody, but have there been times that you've really felt like, you know what, I reached this person, or like I did good today?
Not any particular situation, but I mean, we spend a lot of times in hospitals with people that
Mm.
maybe under the Mental Health Act that have been apprehended, and we gotta sit with that individual for a few hours. So those are times that I I do enjoy in the sense that it allows me to kind of get to know a person because, oftentimes we are dealing, with the same individual more than once. And so I think the more that you can, learn about that person, the better you can, assist them or offer resources that might be available to them. And so, yeah, not that there is anything, a specific situation standing out in mind right now, but those are the times where you can kind of sit down and, connect with someone.
Mm-hmm. I imagine, I know you're not pointing to anything specific right now, but like, I remember when I think I told you I was a journalist before, and people would always ask me like, what was your favorite story? What's your, and it's just like, I have no idea. Like, I've done like a million things throughout today. I imagine it's the same with you, because even though you've only been with the service for just a couple of years, you've been to countless calls. So because we talked about mental health already so much in this with jack.org, and I know that's directed at youth, I wonder, because so many of the officers I've spoken with through this campaign have pointed to their time in primary response as being like one of the most trying times, because you are so often seeing people at their worst, like in their worst moments. People are calling 911 not because they're having a great day usually. So how do you protect your own mental health, with all the stuff that you take home from the job?
Yeah, I think it comes down to having good daily habits and routines as well. So you can't, you know, lose sight of that. So if there's something that you're passionate about outside the job, or you have a hobby, or you've had certain hobbies before coming on, I think it's really important to just hold on to those. And because that's the thing that it potentially is going to ground you every single day.
Mm,
So, when it comes to your own mental health, it's something that you have to look after, but you do have to work at it, and you have to carve out a little bit of time every day for yourself to maybe do some of these things, whether it's being active. And I'm not saying, you got to go out and do, a 3 hour bike ride. It can just be going out and doing, a half an hour walk at the end of the day, or, just doing a bunch of push-ups or something like that. But just
mm,
always kind of, if that's the thing that kind of helps you channel some of the energy, then, finding moments in the day to kind of do that. And then there's, just other sort of coping things that you can do as well, whether it's, talking about a certain radio call with your partner, or discussing it afterwards and just kind of dissecting it. Trying to live, a healthy lifestyle, focusing on your sleep, which I think is super important. And especially with shift work, I think you've got to be pretty disciplined around, how you rest, and when you rest and when you need to take a break,
mhm.
and just, eating a healthy diet. So just all of that contributes to good mental health, I think, in the long run. Obviously, you're going to have days that, are going to be worse than others, or you might go a couple of days where you haven't really been able to do any of those things. But it's important to always kind of go back and, yeah, just do the things that you're still passionate about, that are important to you.
Do you do meditating?
I don't like sit down and do like a meditation practice, because sometimes I feel like, the cycling or the running is it's kind of a form of moving meditation for me.
Mhm.
But I have done, like hot yoga classes in the past. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, there's different forms of meditation that you can do.
Yeah.
And, or it might just be, simple breathing exercises when you're driving into work or driving home, and just focusing on your breathing, just to kind of, de-stress from the day. Yeah.
Okay, I asked you that with hopes that Inspector Hank Singa, who I know through the cycling community, might be watching this, because I don't know if you watched our conversation, but he said that he's been trying to get
Yeah.
into meditating, but he falls asleep when he tries doing it at nighttime. He starts nodding off. So Hank, it's okay. As long as you're on the bike and you're like centering your thoughts, you're breathing, we'll give you a pass for that one. Okay, Larry, is there anything else you want people to know about you, about policing, about police officers in general?
Um, Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're just people, right? And it goes beyond the uniform. And unfortunately, sometimes people see the uniform. It can be intimidating to some, depending on your lived experiences. Uh, but yeah, I mean, officers come from all different walks of life, and we're members of the community. We're here to serve the public, and we come with a variety of our own life experiences as well that hopefully make us a little bit more relatable when we get on scene. And yeah, I believe that through some of the things that I've done in the past, some of the challenging events, those things make you also a little bit more sympathetic and empathetic towards other people as well, because ultimately doing those things isn't really about being like a good athlete. It's about becoming a more well-rounded person, good human being. And so that's kind of always the goal. Like the byproduct of these things is always going to be fitness. It's always going to be, how physically healthy you are. But beyond that, I think you're building yourself, your character. And I hope, I can use some of that in the work that I do, and it allows me to connect with people on a different level.
Yeah, because like you said earlier in the conversation, like you're not just more sympathetic, but you're a more optimistic person than a lot of people, I think, because you not only see the things that you can accomplish, but like you said earlier, you see potential in other people. So when you're perhaps responding to a call, young person that's gotten into some sort of trouble, you might not see that as like a trouble young person. You might see it as a young person that just needs to get through this part and be able to help that person see the other side, that like you said, you're not going to be feeling this pain forever. It's going to pass in the next couple hours or the next couple weeks or the next couple years, whatever it is. So I think that you bring such a positive outlook to policing, and I've found it in many different officers that I've spoken with, but certainly your experience is a unique one. Question: are you going to be doing, I don't know if you just heard the knock on my door, and now there's a ring, forgot to put the sign on. Do you have any other big races coming up? Like what, or any new goals? Because your 10-year goal was the America one, and you did that. Did you do that twice already?
No, I did that just the one time.
Oh,
Yeah.
just the one time. Larry, why am I
Once
even
was enough.
talking to you? Let's do this conversation once you've done that again. Okay, what's your next goal? What's next? You've Everesting, you've gone across America. What's next?
I'd like to run 100 miles one day, which is like 160 kilometers. So there's a few iconic 100-mile races that are in the US and in Europe. So I think it'd be pretty cool to do one of those. Yeah,
Sounds good for somebody that dabbles in running. I mean, why not?
yeah, and then hopefully, yeah, pass on some of those things to my daughter as well, and get her passionate about being in the outdoors.
I love
So,
that. I love that. It'll
yeah.
be so interesting one day, perhaps, to see you, Larry, in the community response unit, cycling around Toronto in your bike shorts and everything. And we'll be able to say, Larry Optis, you can do better than that. Get up the hill. You got to land yourself in like 53 division or something like that, where you can just like ride up Yonge Street back and forth, back and forth, back and forth one day. Anyway, Larry, it has been an absolute pleasure. I so appreciate you taking the time, and what an honor it is for me to introduce you in your policing uniform to the world. So thank you so much. And I should also point out for anybody watching this, Larry's on annual leave right now. So he's doing this on vacation, and I couldn't be more grateful. So thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Tamara. Thanks a lot. Take care.